So you're telling me that veterans are not allowed to pay for their realtor? Hello and thank you for watching. So by now, everyone should have heard about the changes with regards to the NAR settlement. But if you're living under a rock and haven't heard of the NAR settlement, then I'm jealous of you. How do I get under that rock? But if this is your situation, here's a quick update. On March 15th, NAR agreed to settle and pay $418 million over a 4-year period. However, NAR never conceded that they did anything wrong. And let's be honest, the lawyers don't care about proving right or wrong. They just care about getting the payday. And they got it. So moving forward, there are 2 main changes to the rules, but those 2 changes could have a very big impact on the future of how the realtor and buyer's relationships impacts their future. First rule change is the settlement requires changes to the buyer broker commissions that is displayed on MLS. You can no longer display how much commissions the buyer agent will be obtaining for the listing. To my understanding, the purpose of making this change is for the listing agent to verbally express to the seller that they are under no obligation to have the sellers pay for the buyer's agent's commission. By the way, as of now, that's what's commonly practiced, the seller paying for the buyer's agent's commission. By not stating a buyer's commission on the MLS, that means all listings need to be treated equally and realtors cannot steer buyers to only higher paying commission homes. Side note, nobody believes that this has been done since the invention of Zillow, but lawyers, they don't care about that. The old days of the realtors having the inventory log have been gone for over 20 years now. In today's market, the buyers tell the realtors what houses they want to see. But I digress. Now, the buyer must assume that the sellers might not offer any buyer's agent's commission, meaning the buyer might be on the hook for the realtor's commission, which might sound correct in theory, but just like communism, tends not to work in practice. Let me explain. As it stands today, in most cases, the buyer is responsible for their down payment and closing costs. So on a $500,000 home, the buyer has to come up with at least 3.5% down. And in this case, that's $17,500. Then you add closing costs, let's say $6,000. So that in total equals up to $23,500 just to get into a home. Damn, that's a huge commitment to start. Well, add in the fact that the buyer will probably have to start paying for their own agent representation as well. Let's say another 2.5%, right? Not the full 3%, 2.5%. So that's now, instead of it being $23,500, the new total for the home to get into the house turns into $36,000 all in, which leads me to the second rule change. The settlement requires a written agreement between the buyer and the realtor broker outlining the services and fees that must be paid to the buyer's agent. The buyer is going to have to agree that they are acknowledging that the buyer's agent isn't working for free and will have to be compensated one way or another. Whether the seller is offering seller concessions or whether the buyer is on the hook for the agent's commission themselves, either way, the buyer's agent is going to get paid. If you look at it from a seller's perspective, I totally get not wanting to feel like you have to pay for the buyer's agent, right? I mean, what you're essentially doing is paying the commission for the buyer's agent to negotiate against your best interest. You're paying someone to completely undermine your offering with their offering on the sale of your home. But on the flip side, because you are doing this, at least you'll have buyers for your home. If the majority of buyers decide to sit out because they don't have the money for the down payment, closing costs, and now realtor's compensation, then you won't have any buyers to choose from. You might not have enough people to even negotiate with. This is a fast way of driving home values down, having no demand because the price of entry is too high. Instead, people will opt into renting due to its low barrier of entry, right? First month's rent and security deposit. Done. As many economists have stated, we're turning into a nation of renters. All right, so I've explained how sellers might get hurt in all this, but the true damage is the buyers that will continue to buy without representation. Those guys, they are the real losers in this scenario. Why? Because chances are you're going to get demolished in the negotiation with superior agents. I say superior agents, by the way, that's because you're going to have to be a superior agent in order to survive this next phase of real estate. So let me explain to you what I mean by buyers getting demolished and what a good buyer's agent actually brings to the table. One, they set proper expectations. We all want the $1 million home for $400,000, right? The good agents set you up with the proper expectations so that you don't start the home buying process with pure disappointment, but more of what to expect and what to look for. Two, they recommend the mortgage lenders that they trust and know who do a good job. Like every industry, most companies aren't really that great at their job. Most companies, right, they do just enough to survive. That is no different with mortgage lenders. A lot of us suck. Some of us are good. Then there's the cream of the crop. Well, how will a buyer know which lender to choose, right? There's thousands of us. This is typically where the buyer's agent comes in. They help pick a handful of lenders that they know, like, and trust, and they send them to their clients. They pretty much pick the good lenders for the clients. Picking the wrong lender could literally be the worst mistake of the whole buying process. Three, who's going to write up the contract? Are you going to write up the purchase contract for a $500,000 home? Are you going to find a generic contract online that can lead you liable to unintended consequences? Do you want the seller's agent to do this for you as the buyer? Do you want someone who is being paid to work against you actually write the contract for you? Four, great agents have a trained eye. They know what to look for in a home, right? They go in there, they see watermarks on the ceiling. They know what FHA will or will not accept in an appraisal. They know how much a home should be valued at versus how much you should be offering. You know, you could go to Zillow or Redfin, but they're wrong just as much as they're right. Ask any realtor out there. And five, what's the inspection period? And what are your rights as a buyer? Who knows? What's SPUDs? Who knows? When should you counter after being under contract? Who knows? These are absolute necessities when buying a new home. Listen, that's just 5 items. I could probably be here for another 20 minutes. And that's the problem with not having a great buyer's agent. You don't know what you don't know, and that can cost you tens of thousands of dollars in the long run. Nobody will disagree that the buyer's agent's job is much tougher than the listing agent's. They both have their troubles, but the buyer's agent's troubles typically exceed the listing agents. That's why every agent's dream is to become a full-time listing agent eventually, right? Well, it looks like the realtors might be getting their wish sooner than financially feasible, meaning they haven't built up their business big enough to be receiving income from only one side of the transaction because buyers won't or don't have the money to pay for the realtor's agent, meaning the buyer's agent. And lastly, veterans get hurt the most. If you choose to use a VA loan, as is your right as a veteran, you're not even allowed to pay for the realtor's fees. In the VA handbook, Chapter 8 states, fees or commissions charged by a real estate agent or broker in connection with VA loan may not be charged to or paid by the veteran purchaser. If I want to use my VA home loan on my next home, which I do, I will have to ask the realtor to either find me a home that I'll love and that the seller is willing to pay for their commissions, or you're going to have to work for free because I cannot pay you. Actually, I'm forbidden to pay you. Realtor, you cannot charge me for these services. How do you think this conversation is going to go after that with that realtor? Awkward. So we do know that change is coming, but not certain in what form. Some say it'll be still business as usual. Others say it'll be the end of the buyer's agent, not in its totality, but in common practice because the lack of affordability. And I say that I can only know one thing, that if it's meant to be, it's up to me. Too strong.